Welcome back to Reaching Abundance. In this interview episode, you get to meet Lacey Langford, the military money expert. She helps us see the balance between remaining humble and also completely owning who you are. Lacey reframes personal and business growth as just really getting to know yourself, your values, how you work best, and learning to control what you can control. During this episode, we talk about how setting boundaries actually makes you available to accept opportunities and be flexible enough to pivot when the universe throws a surprise your way. All in all, from this interview, you'll hear that you're not alone in your behind-the-scenes drama of owning and running a business, and that the people you place on pedestals are actually very likely to become your biggest supporters. Lacey, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me. I'm excited about this. I love the word abundance, so I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's just start out then with, I would love to hear your take on what abundance is. What does it mean to you?
I think abundance means feeling comfortable, safe, and happy in the moment that you're in. You know, sometimes it won't always be the same. You don't always feel abundant, or you feel like you have less than you did before, the day before, or the morning of. I feel like mine can change at any given second during the day. But I think feeling comfortable has something to do with abundance, that you feel like overflowing, whether that's emotions. When I'm hanging around other entrepreneurs and talking with people, I feel a lot of abundance. I'm very excited. I feel happy in that moment, getting to talk with people that are going through the same things as me, have the same struggles, understand the joys. You know, for example, like getting a podcast sponsor, talking to other podcasters, they feel that abundance if I'm telling them. If I tell another person, like, yeah, that's cool, but telling somebody that's the same space as me, they get that abundance. So I think I feel abundance when I'm getting to talk with people that understand what I'm going through. It makes it even bigger.
Absolutely. I am hearing alignment as an underscore of abundance for you. Would you agree there?
Yes, I think if my work is going well, if my kids are healthy, happy, my family, all of those things are in alignment, I do feel much more abundant. If not, like when things are stressed out, if my kids are stressed out, if I'm worried about business and making money there, or if a project isn't going the way it was planned, if I have a new problem I have to solve, definitely don't feel as abundant. But when things are in alignment and everybody's content, I definitely do feel more abundant. For me, I don't think it's necessarily about the amount of money I make. I think being able to pay my bills and be able to earn a living at what I'm doing is my basic goal. I don't need to be living high on the hog, things like that. But I feel abundant if I'm getting to do what I want with who I want, helping people in the way I want, and earning a living at that. That feels really good to me and abundant.
Absolutely. So talk to me about what you might do in a situation where you don't feel very abundant. Maybe it's a rough week. Maybe the kids are like having issues in school, or there's something going on. And for whatever reason, the alignment feels off and you're not feeling abundant. What are some things you might do, whether they're habits, or you might call up a friend, or like walk us through what almost like a reset would look like?
Well, I feel like I have to do this a lot in business. There's always something that comes up. Even if I do all the planning in the world and think I understand everything, there is a new something I never saw coming that gets dropped in my lap and can be a huge stressor for me. And it's not even that, it's taking away from the other areas. I feel like being able to actually do my work, the running the business side of things, takes away from being able to do those things. And I do feel less abundant when that is going on. But I know I'm not the only one. I think that's been a recent development for me, where I'm really put in my mind that I am not special. I am unique. There's only one Lacey, but whatever has happened to me in business, like I recently had a trademark issue with my business, and I'm not the first person that it happened to, and I sure as heck won't be the last person it happened to. And so wrapping my mind around like this is business and it's just something I have to solve in order to move forward. So I think that's been really helpful for me to get out of a rut or problems or whatever, to understand like, hey, this is just what it is. I'm just the person that's receiving it right now, but I across the world there are other people going through the exact same thing, whether that's worrying about getting a sponsor, whether that's worried about keeping a sponsor, whether that's worried about getting downloads, or do I want to keep podcasting or do I want to quit? Whatever the struggle is, that people are going through that. So that makes me feel better. I don't want anybody else to struggle, but knowing that like I'm not the only one, there's people like me out there, that's helpful. I also create a lot of rules for myself in order to stay structured. So I have a pity party rule. I don't last too long having a pity party. I do think it's good for me to process whatever is happening to me, whether that's bad news, even good news. I've realized I still have to process it. I'm like, oh, this is just so exciting. I need to calm down to really process this and think it through, what the ramifications of this means. But especially on the bad side, to say, okay, I can't let this ruin my whole day. I can't let this ruin my whole week. I can't let this ruin my whole business because of this one bad thing. And so limiting, usually it's an hour. Like you got an hour to whine about this, to cry about this, to pout about it, whatever it is that I'm going to do. There's a time limit. There's no blank check for being miserable. That's, helpful for me to not go down the pit of despair. And then I do other little tricks. Music's very helpful to me to get me motivated, to get me out of a funk, especially the pity party. Like, okay, I got to put on some upbeat stuff. I'm not trying to put on like something depressing because that's not going to help get out of the funk. So music's helpful. I even have a trick. I will go and reset. Like if it's a bad day or I can't get motivated or I just feel in a funk, I will literally go take a shower and redo my hair and makeup and be like, let's try this again. Like I feel refreshed. That is a lot of work. So I that's a rare occasion that I do that. But I feel like sometimes whatever it is, I need to get that off of me. I'm an empath. I've learned that through being a financial coach, that sometimes, some of that stuff, I just take on too much of it. And taking a shower, or the other thing I do is I will go for a run or a walk. I will get away from my desk. I will get outside. I will get away from my bubble and be outside of it to look at things in a different perspective, in a fresh perspective. And the fresh air and being in nature, I think also helps. So there are many different tips and tricks I use to stay focused. I also time myself. It's the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes and then of work and then 5 minutes, I think, of break. But for some reason, I got in my head early on, it was 22 minutes. So that's what I do now. I tell myself I have 22 minutes to move the needle, and I time myself. And I think it's like running. If you want to be a faster runner, you should time yourself. You should try to improve your time. And so even personal stuff like my Christmas decorations, I gave myself 22 minutes to put those suckers away. I'm like, we got to knock this out. I didn't know that I would get it done in 22 minutes. But I was like, I'm going to give it a go. So I set my timer. And I will say my family was not home. No offense to them, but they weren't in my way. So that was also very helpful. I had 22 minutes to just move freely about the house. But I set the timer and just started at it, did it really quick. I did not get to vacuum in the 22 minutes to get up some pine needles, but I timed myself on that, and that only took 3 minutes. So really it was actually the true Pomodoro method. I did it in 25. But all those little things motivate me to be productive and to not dwell on bad things or good things. That's the other thing. I don't want to get big for my britches. It was like great news. Like, that's wonderful. But again, you're not the only one. There are other people that, that have a podcast sponsor, or there's other people that got a speaking thing, or whatever the good news is. I also try to keep that in perspective too.
That's awesome. Okay, so I had no idea you were into like productivity methods. I know we had talked kind of about like recognizing our own energy levels at some point, and we can go into that in a second if you want to share. But I didn't know you were into like timing and stuff. Do you time block your calendar as well? Because this is like very quickly we can move into, yes, these are ways to get us out of a funk, but they're also huge productivity like tips and tricks. So, yeah, do you want to just share about like how you manage your calendar or anything?
Absolutely. I don't do time blocks. I tried that, like only Monday's recording or only Monday, Wednesday, but then it started messing things up and it was all over the place because there's some guests that just can't meet your schedule. And I really want that guest. So I'm not going to be like, no, 3 months from now, when you find a Monday that works, like we'll make it happen. No, I need to flex on my schedule. Somebody's being kind enough to be on my show. So I'm like, I'll do whenever you can do it. But I am very strict about my schedule. I do put everything on my schedule. I do color coordinate my family stuff. So anything that's family is red. So I just know that right away when I see it, this is the most important thing in my schedule, whether that's getting, my son to the orthodontist or them to practice or whatever it is, that takes priority. Marking, I also use emojis a lot in my calendar to signal things. I have two businesses. So I have my podcast, which has recently been renamed to The Milmo Show. It was formerly The Military Money Show. And my coaching business, that side of it, Milmo. And then I also have a conference, Mil Money Con. Well, those have different colors in my calendar. So I know right away, hey, this is a podcast thing. This is a conference thing. So I do try to do it that way, but everything goes on my calendar. If I want to 5 minutes talk with somebody, that goes on my calendar. I also have Calendly linked, which is very important for me, whether that's scheduling podcast guests, coaching clients, meetings, potential sponsors for the conference, things like that. That all has a different type of appointment in Calendly. So, and also an emoji that fills automatically when somebody books that time. That's very helpful. So I do try to be automatic. If somebody is a, business coaching client, that goes through Calendly, they have to pay. So it's already paid for. I know I'm showing up, all that business side is handled. So I'm just showing up as a coach. So all of those things, automation and making sure my calendar is squared away is really important to me because I want to know, one, that I'm being productive in my day. I'm meeting commitments that I've made. Sometimes I mess up, but also too, that I'm balancing being a mom. I'm the main caregiver of, running everybody around and scheduling appointments and, school stuff, all of those things. So I want to make sure I'm, being an awesome mom and family member versus, just a business owner. So I do try to do that. But I think having your calendar is really important to make priority. And then I also schedule like workout time. And some people are really big about like, oh, well, I get up every morning and I do such and such. I really like to be outside. So a lot of my calendar gets adjusted based on the weather. So if it's like, oh, it's a beautiful day, I want to go outside today and I see it's going to be, crappy tomorrow, then I can adjust some things in my schedule in order to make sure that I'm taking time away from being at my desk or being in that mode all of the time. So having a really organized calendar actually makes it so I can be flexible in some areas.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because yes, I want to be one of those people who wakes up and goes running every morning, but I'm sorry, I am not going outside if it's 37. Like, no, just
Correct.
no.
Yes,
I'm
me
not.
either.
I will wait until noon when it's 50 and go out. Thank goodness I live in like a decent climate. But yes, I've been trying to figure out how do I block off that time so that no one will book with me during that time because it's 50 degrees outside. I want to take advantage of that. And so I've been even trying to manage that piece of it because I don't want to go out when it's freezing cold or raining. And, like you said, that adjusts constantly. So do you have any additional tips on how you rearrange things once you see that there's a gorgeous opportunity outside?
Yes, if I see the weather's coming up and it's going to be really nice, if it's available in my calendar, I will block it for me. I'll put like a sunshine emoji and a running emoji and put that in my calendar. I also mindful of it during the season. So like right now, I know I'm not going to get up really early and go. Summertime, yes, I love to get up early and knock it out, especially because then it's super hot here in North Carolina and humid. So going earlier is better during the summer. And so trying to once a week block something in the afternoon during the winter. So I know, but I do try to like on Sundays look at what the weather is going to be and make adjustments in my calendar. And then I've also given myself some grace where I would normally be like, oh, my hair is going to be completely blown out. My makeup's going to be done to show up for this meeting. Well, if it's a chance for me to go to run versus me being looking perfect for something, then it's like, no, I'm going to go take that chance and run. And I might have to just fluff up my hair after a run. But I've come to terms with it's Zoom. Nobody can smell me. I do take a shower, but my hair isn't going to be like freshly blown out for you versus like I'll fluff it up, straighten it a little bit, make it look presentable. And then also, too, fellow business owners are very understanding. So I will show up to a meeting with my face bright red. Like I just had a very small window I could go run. Knew you would understand me showing up to this meeting with a ball cap and literally still in my running clothes. But I also have found that if I do that, it makes me a faster runner because it's like, oh crap, I got a meeting. If I want to run, like I need to really run and get this over with and get back to the house in time for my meeting. So it's actually a good motivator.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show.
Again, making room in your schedule, not maxing out your time. That's just like not maxing out your budget for anything. You don't want to max out your time budget. So leaving some room to flex. I call it like the opportunity fund in anything, money or your calendar. But there are opportunities that come up, if like the Today Show called and was like, hey, we'd like you to Zoom in. And I have a full schedule with people I can't cancel with, I'd be really mad at myself. So I do try to leave room for opportunities and just mental health, maxing out. I've learned that all of these things I'm saying, it's because I've unfortunately maxed out myself and stressed myself out. And so now I try to be a little bit more realistic about my day. Because the other part is when bad things happen and I'm maxed out, it's devastating. Like I have to get on this meeting and pretend like there's nothing going on when I'm really absolutely devastated. And I needed a moment to process that. Instead, I've thrown myself into the next thing. And now it's compounding. Now I got a new problem on top of the other problem that I just had. And it's just getting worse and worse. And then it ends up working nights and weekends to dig yourself out of that hole. So I've really tried to be mindful, especially now having two businesses, that I cannot do that to myself or my family, to always be on, always in work mode, always on a laptop, always on a cell phone, those type of things. So I think making time for yourself, for your mental health is really important. I do think it makes you better at business. I think it leaves room for creativity and a spark to think things through. That's why I love to get outside and go walking or running. It's like, that's my time to process it. Some of the best ideas I've had have come when I'm running, and I will literally like stop and walk and type in the notes on my phone to make sure that I captured that. And then I will pick back up and keep running and think through, what did I just type out? Oh, that's really good. So I think making space is really important to grow.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the parallels between business success, mental health, physical health, and even financial health. In general, I think you and I have both seen it, that when someone picks up their finances and decides to get those straight, a lot of times as they're maturing through that financial journey, they'll just naturally pick up some kind of health thing, whether it is adjusting the way they're eating or a fitness thing or whatever. But it's really funny how they naturally parallel. Like when you're trying to better yourself in one way, whichever lane that is, these other pieces generally come into the puzzle. So, yeah, talk to me about maybe early on in your business journey, what your physical health and mental health practices may have looked like then, and probably some mistakes that you made versus what you're talking about now seems like strong boundaries and a good routine and, a structure around your workouts. But I know it took you some time to get there. So talk to me about what it used to look like so that we have a good picture of how far you've come.
In all of this, getting to know yourself is what happens over time. The more experiences you have, whether that is how you are as a podcaster, how I am as a coach, my process, what motivates me, that's come from me getting to know myself and paying attention. And it might be that the world has made me pay attention. The universe is like, this is a problem that you have to solve right this moment. Now you have to figure out, like, what is Lacey going to do in this moment? So starting out, I really had no intention of building to where I am now. I think it's just a path that's kind of just been carved. The path has been built as I go. But I wanted to be a financial coach to help the military community with money. And I didn't know how to be a coach. So in the beginning, that was learning my process. How am I going to literally sit down with somebody, and what's the first thing I say? What do I do? What do I do when they say this? What do I do when they say that? And a lot of times you can never be prepared. I think that's something I wish I would have known more, that only can work on controlling what you can control. I think in the beginning, you're like, oh, well, I'm going to try to think of all the possible scenarios that this person could ask me because I want to be prepared. I don't want to look like an idiot. Well, anything in life is humbling, especially finance, podcasting. It's a humbling profession. There's a lot to learn. I've come to terms with I don't know everything, and I'm just fine with asking or saying, can you dumb that down for me? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm all right with that, especially to like other people that are in whatever business we're talking about, money or podcasting, conferences. I'm clear, like I'm not the smartest person in the room. But early on, I realized that all these things came up that I never thought would possibly happen. Like one time I had a person that I thought might be suicidal. And I was like, what do I do in this moment? They're not saying it. So I can't really, this is just my gut. Like, how do I handle the situation? And then, looking back after you're out of that scary moment or exciting moment, whatever the moment is, thinking like, okay, what happened here? How could I do better next time? What should I do if this happens again? And so then it became part of my coaching process. All right, we're going to have a little bit of an orientation now so people understand what to expect from me. Talking about money is very intimate. People are telling you things they've never spoken out loud often. And I would do, like 2 coaching sessions. And then at the end of the second coaching session, somebody would say, well, I think I want to get divorced. And I'm like, okay, well, that changes everything we've talked about thus far. So we got to start from the beginning.
Changes what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but then looking back, realizing they weren't comfortable with me. Only after they had gotten to know me a little bit did they feel comfortable enough to say something like that out loud. And so starting to make people feel comfortable in advance became part of my process. Like, how do I let people know I'm not here to judge you? I'm here to help you. I want the best for you. How you spend your money isn't how I spend my money. So I wouldn't want you telling me what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to help you get to where you want to be. And if you're not doing the things you need to do to get there, I'm going to also point that out to you. So I think over time, you start to figure out who you are, how you can handle situations better, and you do better the next time. The same thing in podcasting, not understanding how it works and looking what other people are doing instead of looking at what do I want out of this? Why did I actually start doing this? What's the goal here? It's not about money. It's not about downloads. I'm not doing it for the downloads. I'm doing it because I want to reach more people and help more people. And so having your North Star, your compass of like why you're doing this thing is very helpful for you when exciting things happen and also when bad things happen, is that you can go back to your center and say, okay, that's great that I have a ton more downloads, but that's not why I'm doing it. Or when you lose downloads because they go up and down, up and down. I wasn't doing it for the downloads anyway. So yeah, that's a bummer, but I need to get back on track. That's not a distraction. Even if I had one listener, still doing it to help that person that's listening. Knowing who you are, I think, is really important. And then again, getting the experience, getting better at what you're doing helps you kind of move forward. And I think most of the things that have helped me improve have been through horrible situations, whether that's, getting a letter from or a call from an attorney, whether that is being scared to lose a sponsor, other people thinking I'm not as good as they think I should be, or doing the things that they think I should be doing. All of those things are out of my control. But what I can do is get up and be organized, set goals for myself and for my business, accomplish those goals, stay on task, help people. And sometimes things come to me. If somebody comes to me and is in crisis about money and it's like, oh, well, today I was supposed to go for a run, I'm not going to go for that run. The universe has sent me this person that needs my help today. So I could, do some jumping jacks and I'll be just fine. This person, has something more pressing that I needed to help with. But I think keeping a schedule, setting boundaries allows you to be flexible like that and go where, the universe is sending you. I think that has been very helpful for me. Even like going to conferences, for example. Well, these are my goals for the conference. These are the people I want to talk to. These are the things I want to accomplish. Well, I actually started talking with somebody and hadn't planned to, and it turned into the most beautiful conversation or the most exciting or the greatest opportunity. And it's like, this is the moment I was supposed to be in. I was thinking I needed to be somewhere else in this building, but actually this is where I should be right now. That could lead to a major opportunity in the future, or just, obviously help somebody make their day better. But so I think just over time, you can make all the plans in the world, but life is going to happen and not always going to go according to plan. Again, whether that's good or bad, I think often the bad gets focused on, but you never know when opportunity is going to knock. And I want to be prepared for that. I want to show up and do my best. Going back to the Today Show example, or, getting invited onto like a top podcast, or getting invited to speak at a major conference, whatever it is. If that happens, I don't want to be worrying about all these other crazy things. I want to be like, you know what? It's here. I'm going to make the best of it. Even if I don't feel that I'm good enough to do this, or I'm going to be able to accomplish it, whatever it is, I think you guys got to do the best that you can. And the one thing you can control is yourself. But I think getting to know yourself is very helpful.
So you hit on so many good pieces throughout that. And one of them that I picked up on was how you said, kind of recognizing and being okay with that you may not be the smartest person in the room. But as a business owner, we often think we need to be. But then I want to kind of highlight the quote or saying that, you're the average of the 5 people you're around the most. So if you surround yourself with people who you generally feel are smarter, better, more experienced in business or whatever than you're automatically up-leveling your capabilities, right? So I think you've done a great job at that, because I've heard great things about your conference. And I know that you just didn't like wing it and put that together. I know that you sought out help and resources and guidance from other experienced people. So perfect there. And then the other thing that I'm hearing a lot of is the importance of being present with, like what you said, what the universe sends your way, and how your boundaries actually equal flexibility so that you can be present in those moments. So I think those are some super important highlights for everyone to really hear and try to implement in their business. So I would love to hear a bit about, you mentioned, okay, the conference and then your financial coaching practice and your podcast. And these are all separate things. I know the podcast and your financial coaching practice are together as far as like how you market your business. But talk to me about what that kind of looks like and how you decided that podcasting was the route you wanted to take when it came to reaching more people.
I think I am still learning. There's so many things improving. I have so far to go. But for me, when I started as a financial coach, I mean, bottom line, like all of this, it's business. You're trying to make money. If not, it's volunteer work. So for me, it's you're always wanting to improve your craft, what you're doing, whether a podcast or a financial coach. But bottom line, you need to make money at it. So in the beginning, that's all I was thinking. Like, how can I make money? How can I make this a real business? I still think that, like, how can I be a real business owner? Even though to other people probably feels like I do have successful businesses. But to me, it just doesn't feel that way. Like,
yeah, you absolutely are.
Thank you. But I just feel like I have so far to go. So in the beginning, it was like, okay, well, how can I get my first coaching client? How am I going to do that? Mine was based off of helping the military community. So there's a lot of moving involved with that. So I thought, well, I'm going to have a website so people can find me. And which made me then, start getting into kind of the media space, creating a website so people could find me. Then I thought, well, people need to get to know me. They need to know I'm competent, that I'm not, a jerk or whatever it is. So I was just start putting content on my website. And then that led to me learning more about creating content. And actually, it really started, I found out about FinCon, which is a conference for, content creators in the finance space. And I started listening to their podcast. That was really the kind of in the beginnings, that was some of the first podcasts that I listened to. One of them was the FinCon podcast. And that made me start thinking about podcasting. This is a really great way to get to know somebody, because at the time, Joe Saul-Sehy did it, who's from Stacking Benjamins. And then also Philip Taylor, the founder of FinCon, was on there. And so I felt like I kind of knew those guys before I showed up at FinCon. Those guys were like, who is she? They don't know me, but I got to know them. And I felt like that's really great for financial coaching. People can start to get to know me. And going back to that point I mentioned, people getting comfortable and being able to share stuff with me. If I have a podcast, that will help with that problem. So I'm looking for a solution to that problem, but it'll also help me reach more people as a marketing tool to get my voice out there and to get who I am out there. Again, that I'm competent, I'm qualified to do what I'm doing. And then it just evolved from there, realizing, hey, I do like talking to people. This is fun for me. I love different perspectives on subjects, getting inspired, different backgrounds, showing people possibilities, I think is really important when you're talking about money. Also, I wanted to make it approachable. That's why I have game time on my podcast. No matter who the financial professional is, they're going to play game time on my show, because the point is I want people listening to realize we're just normal people too. We're not, better than you. This is just kind of what we do every day. Just like a mechanic isn't better than me, but they do that all day long. So they understand a car better than I understand it. And I just wanted people to understand that. So I think the podcast was really multi-purposed in the reason why I started out doing it. And I always thought, well, I could just quit this. Anytime I could just quit it. Like if it doesn't work out. And then I was like, you know what? No, I want to do this and get better at it. So creating consistency and getting help. I have a podcast editor, Steve Stewart, who I love. And he was very helpful to, one, he had a system. So I had to meet his system to coordinate, getting my show edited, which was helpful in building consistency in my podcasting. Also, frame of reference. Again, not the smartest person in the room. So any podcast stuff, I'm like, I don't even know what they're saying, Steve. Like, what is this? What is this word? I Googled it, but what's your thought process behind this word? And so being true to who I am and learning and wanting to be better at what I'm doing and want to help people is how it kind of evolved over time. And then, kind of, I don't want to say I had a little bit more recognition, I guess, with the podcast.
Yeah, it absolutely gives you more authority. So yeah, recognition is definitely a piece there.
Yeah. Well, and I think I started to be known in my space, in the military money space that, okay, well, Lacey is in this space. And then that led to more people reaching out to me and other military spouses that wanted to be financial coaches or having a hard time, didn't know how to start a business. So then it was like, well, I should create a course to help people, show them what I've done. And then, getting to talk to a lot of different people and hearing behind the scenes what they're working on. And then realizing, wait a minute, there's somebody else that could help you, but you guys didn't know about each other. And not having mentorship, becoming a financial coach. I didn't understand when I got out of the military the financial space where I could work, and all of that to say it led into me creating a conference, which is something I never had started out thinking I would do. But then realizing, hey, I could help some people here. I have a decent shot as anybody to bring in a group of people together, and then going back to your network, knowing people that could give me some solid advice. So knowing Philip Taylor, the founder of FinCon, and his team, Jessica Buffkin, Libby Gifford, Justin Buffkin, helping me, giving me advice to say, hey, these are the things you should be aware of. These are the things you shouldn't worry about right now. This isn't the level that you're at just yet. Just things to watch out for. So I think it evolves and you start to see opportunity and ways that you can help people, and it evolves over time. So that's a long story of kind of how I got where I'm at now. And again, not intending to create two businesses, but realizing I wanted to help people. So I see my conference really as a passion project, but it's something that I feel called to do and can help a lot of people. And same thing, I'm just seeing where it goes. Like, I want this to happen. I want it to continue to happen. It's going to take time. There's definitely growing pains. I'm getting humbled all the time learning stuff. And often learning the hard way, those are the hardest ones. But I do try to avoid that by getting mentorship, getting coaching, asking for help from other people that are further along than me. So I don't have as many hard lessons learned, but then also getting perspective, from other podcasters like Joe Salcihai or, my editor, Steve, for them to be like, hey, that's not something I've ever dealt with before. So that makes me feel better. Like, whoa, okay, if you didn't know it, then I don't feel so bad that I didn't know it either. So that it gives you perspective on the hard stuff. But then also too, it's helpful to, hear like, hey, you did a great job at that from people that are further along than me. That's very rewarding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and shout out to Steve. You've mentioned him a couple times, but early on in my journey, I knew of him because I listened to some of the same shows that you mentioned, the FinCon podcast way back when, and Stacking Benjamins was like a longtime favorite of mine. So it's like the same thing. Like, I felt like I knew Philip. I felt like I knew Joe. So I showed up like this nobody at FinCon, and I know them, and they're like, who is this crazy chick? like, like, who is this person fangirling over here? But I had heard them mention Steve on their shows. And so I knew immediately that, like, okay, if I need help in this editing space, I'm going to find this guy, Steve, and introduce myself because I feel like I know him too, because so many people have mentioned him. And, he was so receptive and so helpful. And I took some of my very initial podcast editing courses from him. And still to this day, we keep in touch and email back and forth and, share business tips and things like that. So it absolutely helps to have some folks maybe in your same lane or maybe not, maybe somebody doing something kind of like parallel to what you're doing. And those are all super, super helpful relationships. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, yes, definitely. But I was going to say too, is you have to take your shot. So developing relationships with people isn't going to fall in your lap. And this is a wild story, but it's so true. I went to my first FinCon. I took my shot with a company and was telling them all the things I was planning to do. I was like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do all these things. And they invited me to an influencer conference that was in Texas. And I showed up there and Joe Salcihai and Philip Taylor were there. And I saw them talking and I was like, I want to introduce myself to them. Like, I feel like I got a network. Like, why the heck am I here if I'm just going to stay in my bubble? And they were talking together and I wasn't stalking them, but I was watching like, okay, like when is the lull in their conversation? And I was thinking, like, what am I going to talk to them about? And I was like, I'm going to stick with something I know. I was like, I listened to every one of the shows leading up to FinCon, and I realized they did not have somebody that was like me on the show. They did not have a person that had just gone to their first FinCon and what was their experience like. Because that's what I was doing. I was reconning, I was researching FinCon to go to my first conference, and there was nobody that had my perspective. Looking back, I don't know how I did it, but I walked up to both of them and I was like, hi, I'm Lacey, and introduced myself. And Joe's like, I think I've heard of you. I was like, no, you haven't. I'm absolutely like 100% sure you've never heard of me. And then he's like, no. What it was is I put myself in for a Plutus Award because I thought, I want people to start knowing my name. I'm going to start introducing myself by applying to stuff. And so before FinCon, I had done that. I knew 100% I wouldn't get it, but I wanted to like start putting myself out there. And I had totally forgot I had done that. So I was mortified at first. And I was like, oh, but then I realized like, oh, he didn't know my plan, like that I was just trying to like get my name out there. And so I was like, yes, that is me. I did, somebody put me in for an Plutus Award, i.e. myself. And and by the way, for people that have never seen them, they're both like over 6 feet. I am 5'1". So I'm like trying to like get the courage to talk to these really tall dudes and who they're very successful and have no idea who I am. But then turns out one of them does. And so I say, hey, I listened to all of the podcasts leading up to FinCon, and, they're both like, oh, that's great, And so that kind of started the conversation. But I was like, you know what, like shoot your shot, Lacey. But I was like, hey, you didn't have anybody on that was like this perspective of somebody that had just attended their first FinCon. And they both paused, and I was like, oh, I've just humiliated myself, which I probably did anyway. But Joe said, you know what, you're right. We did not have somebody on this year. We had done that in the past, but we didn't have somebody this year from your perspective that was missing. And he's like, okay, he's like, next year, like we'll do it to talk about your first year experience. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. And the whole time I'm thinking, there's no way in hell I'm going to be on the FinCon podcast. There's no way in hell I'm going to get to be interviewed by Joe Saul-Sehy. And then months went by, and he ended up inviting me on, and he interviewed me, and I was on the FinCon podcast to talk about my first year at FinCon. And that was because I got up the courage to go up and say something and put myself out there. And so now that made it so I had a relationship with them, that I was able to talk to Joe about podcasting. I was able to talk to Philip about creating content and writing, for my blog, but then it moved into being able to ask him about conferences. So it started out as something so simple and crazy, and something I definitely had to get the courage to go up and do. But looking back, that was the best decision I made, even though it was so uncomfortable. It ended up being where I opened my circle of people that I could call, at this point, I would say friends. But at that point, it was like, okay, I'm starting to get a little bit of mentorship and get into this space.
And that's kind of the thing I want to highlight too, is that oftentimes we put people on a pedestal because, oh, we've heard their podcast, or like, look, they have 1 million followers online, or they have this, or they have that. And yes, maybe there is a little bit of that there. Maybe you feel like you're nobody, but a lot of times when you bring value to that conversation, which is what you did, you said, hey, I love what you're doing. I've heard every single episode. Here's my insight. And they took that and accepted that basically as a proposal, like, this is something we should be doing. This chick has value. She has a perspective to share. And that's part of why they were able to welcome you in. And, I can vouch for them. Like, they are such nice people. None of us should be intimidated, but it happens all the time to all of us, probably even to you. And you and I have seen each other in passing at all these various conferences. But even still, I'll share with you that I'm thinking like, wow, Lacey Langford, man, she's going to come on my show. Oh my gosh, And so and you're being humble about it, but we all do that to anyone that we look up to. But the truth of it is that we are all just people. We are all just, moms and dads and brothers and, sisters and, family members, right? And we're all just trying to make this thing work, pivots and all, and goals. And, ups and downs throughout the journey, but we are all just normal people. So if we can reframe that fear of whether it's a pitch to someone to be on their show or a sponsor, or you're walking up to introduce yourself, or maybe it's a bold email of, a service that you want to offer to someone, bring value to the conversation and you'll quickly realize that that's just a person too. So I think that's super important for all of us to remember.
Yeah. And also, too, people that are further along than you are your biggest fans, and they're not going to judge you. They have been there and understand the courage it takes to take a leap of faith, to go after something, to put yourself out there publicly. And so they're like the biggest supporters, like, get up, do it, go for it. Yeah, there's going to be some mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And, things are going to go wrong. But then they're the people that are like, hey, happened to me too. Now you're one of us. Like you're in the space, and they treat you as a peer, even though you might not feel that way just yet. They feel that way about you. You just never know. And I agree completely with what you're saying, is like putting yourself out there, like that email all the time. You never know what somebody's looking for. They just don't know you're there. And so, for example, like I read, who was it that, it was somebody famous, somebody online, but they were saying they got their video editor because this person took some of their video offline and edited it and sent it to them to show them proof of the quality of work that they can do. This person never knew that person was out there, but they showed them a solution to a problem they were having. And it's like, all right, you're hired. That's what it is. If you provide a solution to somebody, not another problem, that's helpful to them. And it's so easy to say yes when it's a solution versus just a random thing that's not helpful to you.
Oh, that's so good. So, so good. So, has that ever happened to you?
Somebody just reaching out to me with a solution?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It has a few times. And I have taken the opportunity. One, I'm trying to think of some of them that have happened. One that just is more recent. But I was having a problem with the conference and speakers. And I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak. I want different perspectives, all of these things. It's just a matrix. And if you've never put on a conference before, you might not really understand all the things that go into it. And so, trying to make everybody happy is just, losing battle. But there was one speaker that came to me, and everything was falling apart. And they're like, all right. And it was to the point where it's like, okay, this session is going to collapse. And it was a panel. And this guy came to me and he's like, you know what? This is what we can do. Me and this one other person will talk about this. And he broke down how they were going to do it. And I was like, done. I was like, that sounds awesome. I would love for you two to move forward with that. You don't need me. You just needed my approval, and you didn't give me another problem. You came up with a full solution without me, but just ran it by me, got my approval. And I was like, go for it. And it turned out to be an amazing session. And now I know this person is a problem solver, that instead of creating another crisis or, drama, because there's plenty of that stuff running around. It's like, this person's thinking strategically. How can I take whatever's thrown in my lap and make something awesome out of it? So now I think, how can I take this guy and put him everywhere? How can I, or pair him with other people, so he's now top of mind, anything speaking, because like this guy understands not to leave somebody in the lurch or whatever it is. I've also had people like writing, hey, I want to write an article, or I'm learning. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I can almost do like an internship. I can teach you everything I know. I just don't have the budget right now to pay you. But if you turn out to be a solution, then it's like, I'll find the work, because that's my job, is to make the money in order to be able to run a business. So I think that all the time is, whatever the issue I'm having, like, okay, I need somebody to create social media posts, or I need somebody to do video stuff. It's like, how do you know that person's really good at what they do? I'm not trying to get anybody to do free work, because everybody should be able to earn a living at their area of expertise. But it's a huge investment and a waste of time if you pay somebody sometimes thousands of dollars and get a bad product. So it's like, all right, I'll just wait on that. Like, I'm not ready because I don't have a solution for it. But if you drop the solution for me, I'm like, oh, well, that was an easy decision.
Again, you highlighted a couple of really key, awesome points there. And one of them being, show up strong and serve well and provide solutions. And the person that you helped, that you provided the solution to, is going to then turn around and provide referrals, be your biggest cheerleader, help you get further on your journey. Like you said, with that speaker, you're like ready to book him everywhere. So that's super exciting and helpful for, I think, any, especially starting out business owner. And that was kind of a key that I didn't realize. I just felt small. I didn't kind of really know how to market myself yet. And, it did take a couple of bold moves and big leaps to kind of put yourself out there, walk up and introduce yourself or whatever it is. The other thing is I have heard this so often lately in the like service provider space, and I don't know what's going on here, but I've heard complaints about, people pay up front thousands of dollars and either don't get a product at all or get a bad product. Or the other piece is just like kind of like you have to rustle the product out of like, are you going to get this done? Are you going to get this done? Okay, we're 30 days past due. Like, where is my YouTube video or whatever? And my husband and I were talking about that the other day. That's astonishing to me that someone would pay and not get what they were promised. So, just a word out there is that if you are promising some product or some service, make sure you deliver, because the whole like positive referral thing can go great or it goes the other way, right? People will say like, don't use them. So your business reputation is on the line there, and not to put pressure on people, but just realize that, it's your credibility that's at stake, is whether you show up and do the thing or not. And that seems like duh, of course. But I'm hearing it in multiple places online. I'm seeing different, conversations on Facebook and things like that. So I think in our minds, sometimes, like you were even saying about coaching, we imagine this really high level of service. And I have to be so and so to be able to do this well, or I have to know all these things to be able to answer questions immediately when clients ask, right? And a lot of times, really, the bar is much lower than we expect. And it's just a matter of showing up and serving the best we can in those spaces. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I want to hear about your growth from being a podcaster, like kind of who you were along your personal growth journey or along your abundance journey when you first started your show, and what changed along the way, especially in those early episodes 1 through 50, let's say. There's a lot of personal growth that happens there. So would you mind giving us some insight there?
Just again, feel like I have so much growing to do, so it's hard to say. But I think I've grown in the fact not worrying so much what other people think. When I was starting out, I still do, worried about the sound of my voice, saying too many ums and ahs, all of those things, sounding too girly, not sounding smart enough. Did I ask, questions well? Did people find that interesting as I found it interesting? Was it long enough? Was it, too long? There's so many things to worry about, to nitpick, to put something out to the world, but getting firmer again in who I am. And I won't use the word brand, but that's the best explanation I can have of it, is what you're putting out to the world. But I see it as who I am, getting firm on who I am that I put out to the world, and what I want to stay true to, what I want to be authentic about. And I do want to be positive. I got once invited on a podcast, and I think they wanted really depressing stuff. And I'm like, I am not your girl. Like, I'm trying to find the good in everything. Like, there's so many bad things to find in the world. Like, I don't need any help that gets dropped in my lap all the time. I'm trying to find the good. And so with my podcast, getting familiar with myself and getting to know, like, this is who I am, and being okay with I'm not for everybody. My show's not for everybody. It is a very niche podcast, and things are going to change. I'm not always going to be the same. Like, now I'm talking more about entrepreneurship on my show that I've rebranded it. So things change. And that's the other thing, is getting okay with that. Like the version I started with, changing my name or changing the logo, changing the content, getting better at interviewing, that takes time. And those are some of the things I'm most proud, probably what I feel abundant about when somebody says, hey, that was a really great interview after we get offline. You did a really great job. Those were great questions. You could tell that you put thought into this. I really enjoyed being on your show. Yours isn't like other shows, or whatever the feedback I get. But being okay with who I'm growing into, I think, is something that's really important, and staying true to yourself, that you don't have to do the latest talking head video, or you don't have to do social media. You don't have to do everything that everybody else is doing. I am actually trying not to be like anybody else. I don't want to have the same show as everybody else. I don't want to be the same person. I don't want to be the same financial coach. I don't want to be the same conference owner. I want to be Lacey. And I can't compete with other people. I can't compete with you, Virginia, as a podcaster. I can't compete with you as a coach. I can't compete with you as a mom or a friend or a person. But I can aspire, like get inspiration from you and from other people, and try to be the best version of myself. And I think that's what I've gotten more comfortable in doing the podcast and putting myself out into the world. It is very hard. I just had to do some hard episodes announcing the rebranding. And I talk to Steve Stewart when I'm recording my solo stuff, and it's almost like a therapy session. And I was like, Steve, I don't know why this is so hard for me, but I think it's because I've been going through all these things privately, and now it's like sharing with the world, like a private hurt. And it's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. And anyway, and so getting comfortable with all of these things about yourself, I think, is really important, and being happy, like where you're at in the moment, like growing. I'm all about the climb. Like I still have so much to learn and further to go. So I try to stay focused on that, not like, oh, this is really great, like that I have this or I have that. But I have come a long way. I've learned a lot, but I still have a ways to go. So I think time will only tell on those things, but taking moments to look back on all the things I've learned and how I've grown, I think, is really important. And I think everybody should do that. Even if, you just finished your very first podcast, that's something to look back on and be like, you know what? That was really hard, putting myself out there, recording that and figuring it out. So I think the little things help you grow.
Absolutely. Well, and before you go, I want everyone to be able to find your conference, your coaching services, and your podcast, any other offers or, big initiatives that you have that you want to share. Tell us where we can find you online, please.
For my podcast is The Milmo Show, and my coaching, all of those things are on my website, milmo.co. And then for the conference, it's for financial professionals that are united by military service in some way. And you can find all the information about that at milmoneycon.com. See photos and see what things are like. I think that's helpful when you're doing research.
And we will put this in the show notes, but it's M like Mary, I-L like military, right? Milmo, yes. Military money, kind of like the abbreviation almost.
Yeah, milmo.co.
Perfect. And yeah, I know the rebrand behind the scenes must have been quite the challenge, but I'm excited to see the new stuff. So thank you for sharing that all with us.
No, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy chatting with you. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. You are an inspiration.
It's kind of you to say.